grade, and then 7th to 9th grade, and 10th to 12th grade. So I want you all to like pay attention. And if you don't know, or if you're like really confused, just ask me and tell me which grade you are in so that I reply to you according to the grade that you are in. Secondly, this is going to be probably a very different format for a lot of people. So don't worry, like just pay attention and you would be able to follow exactly what this format is trying to ask you for. Cool. Just give me a second, I'll share my screen. If you have any question, just like raise your hand after the slide is over, and then I'll give you the opportunity to speak. Okay. Okay, hello everybody. First things first, congratulations for making to the state rounds. You should be really proud of the speeches that you have made in the previous round, but also good luck for the next round. It's going to be difficult than the previous round, but I'm sure you all will do great. Having said that, let's move towards what we're going to actually talk about in today's session. We're going to tell you what the format actually looks like. So previously you were individually competing, but now it's not going to be individual. It's going to be team-based, and you're going to qualify based on the team. And it's going to be, it's either the entire team qualifying to the semifinals or nobody is qualifying from the team, as I said. So what this motion is called, this format is called is Asian Parliamentary Format. Can I just get a quick heads up of how many people actually are aware of the Asian Parliamentary Format? Okay, Adya knows about it. Read, oh, great. So we do have people who know about it. Perfect. So Asian Parliamentary Format, we're going to follow that, but we're not going to follow like the complete a sense of Asian Parliamentary Format. So you know that it's 3 versus 3, right? So we're going to have like teams who are going to participate in like a pair of, or like a team of 3. Now it's going to be 3 versus 3. That means one team goes against the other team. Now so you know how it goes, right? For the motion and then against the motion. One team speaks for the motion, another team speaks against the motion. And these teams are known as proposition and opposition. So proposition is going to speak for the motion, opposition is going to speak against the motion. Now, proposition is going to again have 3 speakers, opposition is also going to have 3 speakers. Now, what is the flow of the entire debate? For those who do not know how Asian parliamentary works, is that first speaker is proposition. So proposition first speaker is called as PM or Prime Minister. Followed by is the first speaker from opposition, then which is known as leader of opposition. After that is the second speaker of proposition, which is known as the DPM or Deputy Prime Minister. Followed by you have the second speaker from opposition known as DLO or Deputy Leader of Opposition. Followed by the third speaker from proposition known as Government Whip or the third speaker if you may want to call that. And then lastly, you have the third speaker from opposition. You don't need to worry about these terminologies of PM, DPM, DLO, all of that. What you need to know is that there's 3 speakers from proposition and 3 speakers from opposition. First speaker from proposition speaks first, followed by first speaker of opposition, then the second speaker of proposition, followed by the second speaker of opposition, then the third speaker from proposition, and then finally the third speaker from opposition. Now, if you want to just like simply understand how that goes, it's basically back and forth. So proposition, opposition, and then proposition, and again opposition. This is basically the flow chart which you may want to like know as to how the debate actually flows through. And that's pretty much it. That's how the format is going to look like. But what are the roles of each individual in the speech or each individual in the debate is going to be dealt with in like the later parts of the debate. Now, those who told me that there's going to be, that they know Asian parliamentary format, can you tell me what is the difference between this Asian parliamentary format and the Asian parliamentary format that you all have heard about? Are there no answers?
The slight difference at the last speaker.
Yeah. So after the third opposition speaker, you should technically have a reply speech, but we're not having reply speeches in this tournament. I'm just telling you because, like, in case if you want to know about Asian parliamentary format in general, that's how Asian parliamentary formats actually work. But we're not using reply speeches. So you just need to know that in this particular tournament, you're going to have one speech per person, and there are going to be total 6 speeches in the round. Now, there is a difference between what is the time limit of the speeches. Now, if anyone knows how the time limits actually work, can anyone tell me what is the actual time limit of Asian parliamentary debate? Like,
7 minutes.
correct. So in this one, you don't have 7 minutes. So it's based on the category that you belong to. So if you are from 4th to 6th grade, you're going to get 3 minutes per speech. So proposition first speaker, opposition first speaker, basically all the speakers are going to get only 3 minutes to speak, followed by 7th to 9th classes. So the grades who are the people who are in 7th, 9th grade, they are going to get 4 minutes of speech, and then the people who are in 10th to 12th grade are going to get 6 minutes of speech. So just pay attention, whichever grade you are in, you're supposed to speak according to that. If you are in the junior division, you'll get 3 minutes. If you're in the middle division, you're going to get 4 minutes. And then if you're in the senior division, you're going to get 6 minutes. All right. Then there is something called as oral adjudication. Now, what happens in like different debates is that you don't necessarily get as to why you lost, but this particular format gives you the ability to know as to like why you lost a particular debate, which means that after your debate is over, you're going to get, the judge is going to tell you 2 things. Firstly, what is the verdict as to who won the debate. Secondly, they're also going to give you the justification as to why a particular team won over the other. The benefit of that is basically you would understand why you lost or why you won, but also you would know where you can improve in your debate and like in your speeches and stuff like that. You can also have the ability to ask the judges the feedback for, let's say, like what did I miss or how can I improve and so on and so forth. So that's how it's going to be. Now, last thing is called POI. POI is point of information. Now, POI is basically, let's say, if you are in junior category, that is 4 to 6, you don't need to hear about POIs. POIs are not for you. So you don't have to like ask or take POIs. There's nothing like that for you. But if you are in 7th to 9th grade and 10th to 12th grade, you need to understand what POIs are. POIs are point of information, which means that during when the speaker is speaking, so let's just take an example. Let's say proposition per speaker is speaking. And let's take the example of let's say the 7th to 9th grade, that person is in 7th to 9th grade. Now, this person is speaking and proposition first speaker is speaking. So the opposition, the entire opposition has the ability to interject and ask a question to that particular speaker. Now, normally you can ask questions in other formats after the person is done with their speech, but this format allows you to interject the speaker and then ask the question. Now, even though there's something called as interjection, that doesn't mean that it's compulsory that you can interject whenever you want to. You can only interject the person from the first. You can only interject them like not in the first or the last minute, but you can like interject them during like the in between. So for example, the same thing, the 7th to 9th grade, the person cannot ask POI from the first minute, but they can ask POI from 1 minute 1 second to I guess 2 minutes and 59 seconds. After you reach 3rd minute mark, you cannot ask POI. So in the last 1 minute and the first 1 minute is going to be called as protected time, and you cannot ask POIs in that period. However, the way how you're supposed to ask POI is that it's supposed to be very short, which means that it's supposed to be 15 seconds only, and you cannot like exceed 15 seconds, which means that if you want to ask, either like write somewhere the POI that you want to ask. Basically, these are just questions. So let's say if I'm saying that there are 3 reasons to believe why healthcare system in India is extremely bad, I think at that moment of time, if you have a question, you can say POI. I have the ability to either accept that or reject that. So let's say I say, okay, ask me the question. Then you're supposed to say, what do you mean by that? And can you explain the first reason? Or if you say, oh, but don't you think that other countries have like worse healthcare systems or something like that? So you can basically ask questions like that. Probably point of information is pretty like straightforward, right? So it's basically point of information, the point on that particular information that you're talking about. So that's largely it. POIs are that. And again, it's not compulsory, but so like that, and that's the one exam that I gave you. So if I accept the POI, so speaker at least has the liberty to accept or reject. So let's say if Adya asked me the question, POI, and then I say, no, I don't want to take the POI. And then that's it. You cannot like force me to take POI, or you cannot heckle me. So that's how it's going to be. That's how POIs are. So POIs are only for 7th to 9th grade and 10th, 12th grade. It's not for the junior division. This is the end of this slide, but if you guys have any questions particular to this slide, just ask.
I have a question.
Yes.
So in our speech, can we reply to the person? Like, can we ask a question while speaking, include it in our speech, or it's not allowed, or we can't do that and just speak our speech and then the other person counters it?
It depends on the kind of question that you're asking. So if you're asking question which is rhetorical and the person is supposed to answer that in their speech, you can do so. So for example, if you're saying that, in the motion which is like this house would ban plastic, and your proposition 1, you can say that I would like to ask opposition as to how they're going to be able to solve the problem of environmental damage. I think it's like largely rhetorical. So you're just saying that, oh, they can never solve the problem of environmental damage. But if you're saying that, oh, can I ask question during my speech and then they're supposed to answer, then no, you cannot do that.
Like in their speech, can they reply? Not like directly.
Oh yeah, sure. Like if you're saying that, I would like to ask the question to opposition. I mean, it's like your choice, by the way. It's basically rhetoric, so you can use it however you want. But yeah, they're not supposed to answer while you're speaking, if that makes sense.
All right.
Okay, did it answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Cool. Rhythm?
Yes, I just wanted to ask if POIs are only restricted to the opposition, or can the proposition also ask questions in
So yeah, so proposition can ask POIs to opposition and opposition can ask POIs to proposition. So it's basically like proposition cannot ask POIs from their own team members, they can ask POI from their opponents.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nandini?
Thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry for that clap. That was by mistake.
Okay.
I have a doubt that can I reject a POI after hearing the question?
No, you cannot.
Okay.
So it's
Sure, thank
also
you.
like, okay, that doesn't mean that you are like, there's a compulsion on you to reply to that question. So you can be like, yeah, tell me your question. And then you can say that, so the good thing is to reply that. But if you don't have the answer, that doesn't mean that you're going to be like, oh, what should I do? So you should just move on to your speech. Or you should just be like, my second speaker can answer that question. Or you can say that, oh, I'll get back to you on that in the later point of time in my speech.
All right, got it. Thank you.
Cool. Are there any more questions on this slide? Did you all understand the format and everything? I hope there's no question.
Yes,
on that.
ma'am.
Perfect. Let's move to the next slide then. Cool. And now I told you there are different speakers, and that also means that there are different roles for the speakers. The reason why there are different roles is that if there's going to be no roles, it's going to be a very boring debate, and everybody is probably going to repeat the same thing, which is not appreciated. Therefore, there are different roles for each speaker. Now, PM and LO is the first speaker from both sides. PM is proposition, LO is opposition. Now, DPM, DLO is proposition and opposition second speaker, and government whip and opposition whip is the third speaker from both sides. Now, again, you don't need to remember these terms. It's just for your understanding. Now, what happens with the speaker roles of each individual? Now, PM and LO, because they are first speakers of their respective teams, they have similar roles. Now, PM is supposed to set the debate and articulate burdens. Now, can anyone tell me what do you think burdens are?
The main points of a speech, the main arguments which will help the team help in leading.
Okay, any other answers?
Can you elaborate on
Basically
the
being the leader
The
and
problems.
following up with the team.
Basically being the leader and? I couldn't hear the later part of it. Okay. Rhythm, you were saying something.
I was asking if you could repeat the question and elaborate on it a bit.
Yeah, so can anyone tell me as to what articulation of burdens probably mean? We know what burdens are in like real life, but what do you think like burdens are in debate world?
I'm eyeballing here, but I believe that it could be the
Ma'am,
problems with your
ma'am,
side of the speech,
The
the
ma'am,
problems that you know exist, but you have to speak against them either way.
okay.
ma'am, is it like showing errors or fact of logic in the opposing team's case?
Yes, so I think like the answers are like combined to what you all said. Burdens are basically when you say that, you know, it's your burden to prove to me X, Y, Z. When I say it's your burden to prove, it's basically like
Just
when
burden of proof. It's just burden of proof, right?
yes, correct. So you basically tell that, look, if you're saying that this house would ban plastic, it's your burden to prove as to the problem that you have identified, whether it will be solved by the end of the debate by you telling that, look, these are the ways how we can solve the like problems. Problems probably be like, it's very problematic for the environment. And then by the end of the debate, if the proposition is not able to prove that, you know, if you ban plastic, the harms on the environment is probably going to be reduced, I think they don't fulfill their burden, right? So burdens are basically what they're supposed to fulfill by the end of the day or by the end of the debate. That means that there are some burdens that you take upon yourself when you see a motion. For example, if it is this house would ban plastic, there are particular burdens from proposition. Proposition could be like why do you want to ban plastic? Or if that's the reason, do you think that particular problem is going to be solved by probably like banning plastic and so on and so forth? Now, opposition can also come up with burdens for proposition. The reason why that's very important is that, let's say, if PM goes ahead and tells that, look, our burden today is like telling you that we're going to have a better world at the end of the day because we're going to like ban plastic and we're going to prove to you by the third speech. That's their burden and they're set on themselves. But LO can do two things, and that's like for both of the speakers. LO can either like can say that, look, we're going to prove that why even if you ban plastic, you will still not be able to solve the problem. I think that's one burden that they take upon themselves. But secondly, they can also like push on burdens on their opponents. They can say that if proposition can prove to you that, you know, they will be able to have alternative methods of using like different things which plastic actually is used for, they can win the debate. Basically telling that, look, it's not feasible to ban plastic. So that's how that's how the burdens actually work. So basically, you take upon yourself some burdens, which as a debater you're supposed to fulfill. And if you don't fulfill, the opposition is going to get the leeway, and they're going to probably win the debate. And the ones who take the burden and fulfill their burdens probably can win the debate as well. Yes, Vidushi. Do you have something to say, Vidushi? Okay, I'm gonna assume that was my mistake. Cool. The second thing that first speaker from both sides is supposed to do is define your understanding of the terms in the motion and the world in which the debate probably happens. Now, I want to give you an example and tell you as to how that actually works. Let's say the motion is this house would reduce, or let's say this house would reduce the taxes for law-abiding citizens. Now, this is the motion. What is the burden, as in like what is the meaning of defining the motion or the technical terms? That will probably mean that from proposition and opposition, as first speakers, you're supposed to give what is the meaning of law-abiding citizens first, and secondly, you're also supposed to tell what is the meaning of taxes per se. So when you say, look, we mean that law-abiding citizens probably mean that, oh, the people who, you know, don't break traffic rules, the people who probably don't do antisocial activities, they follow all the rules, so on and so forth, is what a law-abiding citizen looks like. But secondly, what imposition of taxes look like is that we're talking about income tax specifically and not goods tax, stuff like that. You can probably like just like determine as to what your side of the house is going to look like. You can define the words or the technical terms, which probably as an average reasonable voter, nobody actually knows. So that's what you do in terms of defining the motion, defining the terms in the motion. Specifically, why it is important. It's important because like for speaker, let's say proposition for speaker comes and tells you that, look, we think that imposition or the reduction of taxes is going to look like income taxes only. Now, it's fine. I mean, it's a fair enough definition. But let's say from opposition, you have a different understanding of what taxes actually mean. Let's say from opposition, you meant that, look, it's not just about like income tax, it's about goods and services tax as well. And we would want a reduction of that also. So it's basically you challenging the definition from proposition. And that's what is called as counter definition from opposition. So that's how the definition part looks like. So proposition gives a definition. If opposition does not agree to the definition, a lot of times opposition also agrees to the definition, because a lot of times you can't really have a lot of interpretations of terms. But in case if you think that your proposition is being really uncharitable, then go ahead, challenge the definition, give the reason as to why the definition is bad, and then give your counter definition. You cannot like leave the debate by saying that, look, we don't agree to your definition, and also don't give us counter definition as well. So because then the debate would revolve around no definition, we don't know what's the debate is about, or it's going to be very ambiguous in the first place. The third thing that you're supposed to do is preemption at PM and rebut at LO. Now, proposition first speaker or prime minister is the first speaker of the entire debate, which means that proposition has no idea as to what opposition has done. That's specifically because you have not heard a particular speech or any speech for that matter, right? So, but what you can still do as PM is that you can still preempt, right? You can still think of or like assume what are the probable arguments that could come from opposition. That's when you preempt the arguments and then rebut them preemptively, which means that let's say it's obvious when it comes to this house would ban plastic argument that opposition is going to run that, oh, there's no alternative to plastic. The preemption, and you know that for a fact that they're going to like question that alternative like mechanism to solve that problem, and so on and so forth. So proposition can go ahead and say that we know for a fact if opposition is going to come and tell you that, look, it's like not feasible and like we cannot have an alternative to plastic. We disagree to that because there are so many more sustainable options that are available in market right now, and therefore we don't think that particular argument stands in the debate. That's what PM did. PM preempted that argument which might come from opposition and already rebutted that, which is going to enhance a lot of points and marks for PM, but also like their team in general. That's called preemption at PM. The last thing that you're supposed to do is that introduce the argument that is going to be given from your side. So you're saying that, look, we're going to give you 3 arguments from my side of the house. We're going to tell you, look, why like banning plastic is going to be very beneficial for the health of individuals. The second argument that we're going to give you is why it is so beneficial for, let's say, the environment for that matter, and so on and so forth. And then you can see that, and then you can give the reasonings to that. I'm going to go into the details in like the later part of the slides, but this is essentially what PM and LO is supposed to do. Okay, Vidushi, do you have a question?
Yes.
Okay.
So, do you articulate only the burdens of your side, oppositions, or both?
It's up to you if you think it is a very good strategy to articulate burdens for your opposition, and if you think that you can push more burdens on them so that they are very like, so that they're either like very scared to fulfill them, or it's like reasonable enough for them to fulfill it. So for example, you can say that, like as PM, you can say that our burden in this debate is to prove to you as to like why we would be able to solve the problem of environmental damage. But you can also say that opposition on the other side has to prove to you as to like why it is okay to let the environment like suffer and not do anything. So you can do anything. Yeah, you can basically do both.
So generally, what do we do?
You can generally, I mean, it's really up to the strategy of speakers. If you want to put the burden on opposition, you can. It's literally one sentence. But if you think it's like taking your time, because you don't have to elaborate on that burden of opposition, you're only supposed to do your side. So I think it's like, it's just that if you want to identify, I think it's appreciated that you identify both the burdens. But then, yeah, I won't say that generally what people do. I think it's just up to the speakers, honestly. If you want to, you can.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If we articulate the burdens of the opposition, do we have some benefit?
The only benefit is that if opposition already has a burden on themselves and they don't like fulfill that burden, and that burden essentially is very like key to the motion, I think it can have a really good impact on the judges, and then judges feel like they imposed a burden on you which you never fulfilled. And if judges think that that burden that you imposed on the opposition was very very important and was inherent part of the motion, you can probably win the debate. Okay, are there any more questions?
No, I don't have any.
Cool. Let's move to the DPM and DLO, that is the second speaker from both sides. So let's say what the same example, I'm going to use the same old, like this house with bad plastic example, because I think it's the easiest. So let's say the first speaker went and gave 2 arguments. Now, what can the second speaker do? The second speaker can now give additional arguments to the 2 arguments that are already being given. But secondly, can also give better analysis to that argument, for example. So let's say if the first speaker gave example to like why it is so like harmful to health, for let's just take health. So second speaker can go ahead and like give examples of like what are the harms in terms of health. For example, they can give examples of the disease that happen through like consumption of, let's say, food from plastic containers or plastic bags, etc. But also, like if they're talking about environment, for example, the first speaker was talking about environment. The second speaker can go ahead and extend on that and say that, look, we think that the environmental harm, and they can be specific. They can be like, oh, it harms the animals, and like turtles are dying and stuff like that. So you can go ahead and extend, or in terms of like reasoning, you can give more reasoning as to why that happens. You can give more examples as to why that happens. You can also give another angle to that argument that your first speaker gave. But like you don't always have to depend on the first speaker to give more like analysis. So it's always better to like rebuild that case, but also go ahead and give new rebuttal, like new argument. So what you can do is that, okay, we have already presented you 2 arguments from my first speaker. I'm going to give you the third, like an extension or a third argument from my side, which could look like, let's say, why it is so harmful for consumers in the first place, or why it is so harmful for economy, for example, right? So you're giving a new angle to the debate, you're like adding material to the debate, and that's very helpful as a second speaker. So 2 things, summarizing the 2 things that you're supposed to do, and the third thing also, let's just like take that away as well. The third thing that you're supposed to do, okay, tell me one thing. The second speaker from proposition has heard how many speeches from opposition?
One speech from the opposition, the DPM speech.
No, the leader of opposition speech. Yes, so they have only heard 1 speech. So the DPM has heard 1 speech from opposition. That means they have an opportunity to rebut the arguments from opposition, right? So now DPM can rebut to the points of their opponents. Now DPM can go ahead and say, look, whatever the leader of opposition said did not make sense, or probably like reasons why it did not make sense, why it is not reasonable, why you can go ahead and disprove those arguments, you can respond to those arguments, and so on and so forth. So you can rebut as well. Now the 3 things that the second speaker is supposed to do: firstly, extend and rebuild the arguments that your first speaker has already given. Secondly, give new arguments, give new angle to debate. Third, rebut the case that has come from your opponents. And I think that's the most important thing, because if it's about only like positive case and you're not engaging with your opponents, it's probably going to be very harmful for your case at the end. So even if you make a very beautiful case in isolation, it cannot win you the debate unless you respond to your opponents. I hope that makes sense. Now, the DLO, like the DLO as in like the second speaker from opposition, tell me how many speeches has the DLO heard from their proposition?
2.
Correct. Yes. So now DPM has a little more burden than proposition, because DPM has the ability to respond to 2 speeches, and DLO has the ability to respond to two speeches, and DPM could only respond to 1 speech. And that's also the case with, I think, the government whip, because government whip cannot respond to opposition whip. However, and that's exactly why opposition whip cannot give new material, and we're going to come back to that later. So let's come to the government whip and opposition whip. That is the third speaker from both sides. The third speaker is going to give you a biased adjudication. What is a biased adjudication? Now, let's say, when you hear a debate happening, let's think of it as you're the third speaker and you've heard the two speakers from proposition, two speakers from opposition, and you're the proposition third speaker. You have the bias that your team is winning. And why that is the case, you would have some reasonings for that. Now, judge the debate as and when it goes on and tell the adjudicator in your speech as to why you think your team wins. So you're going to give a biased adjudication. You're going to tell that, look, these are the reasons why propositions should win the debate, and therefore we should win the debate. But secondly, you're also supposed to weigh in your arguments to what the other teams have actually come up with, right? So let's say if there is a clash. Can anyone tell me what is a clash, if you all know?
Ma'am, can you repeat, please?
You all know what a clash is, clash of argument?
The same argument given from both the sides?
Correct. So, yeah. So it's basically like when two teams are having different opinions on the same matter. Let's say when proposition says that, it's beneficial for economy if you ban plastic, and opposition says that, look, it's extremely harmful for economy if you ban plastic, because like there's no alternative. The alternatives that are there are very expensive, and therefore like the cost of having a particular product is going to increase so much, and therefore the consumption of those products is going to be reducing to a very huge extent. They both are contending on the same thing, that is economy, but they have different opinions. Proposition says it's going to be beneficial, and opposition says it's going to be very harmful. Now there's a clash. That means difference of opinion. Now what would happen is that the judge is confused as to who to give this argument. Now, what the third speaker from proposition or opposition is supposed to do is evaluate that clash and give reasoning as to why you win that particular clash. For example, it's the same thing. So you're supposed to say, panel, the first clash in the debate is about economy. I'm going to prove to you as to why proposition took that clash, and these are the reasons why. The first reason is that proposition proved to you that it's going to be beneficial, and we gave you like a full reasoning as to why that is the case. So an opposition did not respond to that in the entirety or something like that. But opposition can also do the same. Opposition can be like, look, the clash is economy, and we think that we win the debate because we gave you the analysis of the supply and demand chain and stuff like that. So I think that's how you're supposed to weigh in the argument and say why that you win that clash. Thirdly, the weighing in of argument. Let's say if there is no clash, a lot of times teams run like parallel cases, but what that could mean is that you're supposed to evaluate as to whose arguments are better. For example, let's say both of you as in both of the teams have evaluated or identified different stakeholders. Can anyone tell me what stakeholders are in a debate? So stakeholders are basically people who are impacted by the motion. For example, in this motion, the stakeholders can be shopkeepers, the stakeholders can be the manufacturers of plastic, it can be the consumers, it can be environment, stuff like that. So people, individuals, or anything who are being impacted by the motion are called as stakeholders. Let's say proposition identifies the stakeholders being the manufacturers. Let's say the proposition identifies the stakeholders as environment and consumers, and opposition identifies the stakeholder as the retailers and manufacturers and economy. Both of them have different stakeholders. At the end of the day, as the third speaker, you're supposed to evaluate as to which stakeholders are more important, as in which arguments are more important than the others and why they are important. So last thing that you're supposed to do as a third speaker is supposed to summarize what has come from the entire debate. It's important because when you hear 3-4 speeches of a judge, it's a very messy debate and you don't know what's happening. So the third speaker is going to come and clear the debate and tell you as to what's actually happening. So you're going to say that, look, from proposition, we gave you 3 arguments, we gave you these many rebuttals, and you're not just supposed to give quantity, you're supposed to give quality as well. So for example, you can say, my first speaker told you as to why it is beneficial for environment, and they also told you as to why it is beneficial for health. And my second speaker added on to that and said that why it's beneficial for economy. And we gave you rebuttals on the points of opposition and list out the rebuttals that we gave. That's called summarizing the debate. That's pretty much it with respect to this. It's just like the primary part of it. We're going to go in detail later, but if you guys have any questions on this, just ask.
The GW will, if the GW and OW have the same summarizing and almost the same words, what do we do in this case?
It's not going to be same at all, because like, how can it be same? Government whip is going to summarize what their side has said. So government whip is supposed to summarize what PM, DPM has said by now, and opposition whip is supposed to summarize what LO and DLO has said by now. So they're just summarizing what their own team has said. So it cannot be similar.
Okay, so, like if we cannot summarize, if we are summarizing what our team members have said and also add what other team members have said, will that make sense?
Yeah, it would. If it would make sense if you're comparing as to like why your. So let's say if I say that, oh, proposition gave these arguments and opposition gave these arguments, we think that we win collectively because our arguments are qualitatively better. It's never a quantity argument based idea, because like, even if like, let's say proposition came up with 2 arguments, opposition came up with 4 arguments, but the quality of argument that proposition gave was better, I think they can still win. So never like define based on like quantity. But yeah, so I was going to say that yes, you can do that if you're comparing as to like why your contribution to the debate is better. Yes, you can do that. Cool. Any other questions on this?
No, ma'am.
Cool. Going on to what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do as a speaker. So proposition for speaker, we're talking about proposition for speaker only, what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do. A lot of it has been like already being dealt with. So I'm just going to go like over it again. So firstly, you're supposed to set the context, define the topic and the technical terms. I've already told you what that means. Secondly, you're supposed to define your position in the context of the motion. Now, what position means is that, let's say, if it is about a debate where a like we are talking about, you're talking about imposition of tax, same thing. Your position of the debate is going to look like, let's say, we are just saying that we want to reduce taxes. We're not removing tax. The reason why that specifying of position is important is because a lot of times opposition just get away with like making claims which are not even yours. So they can say that, oh, when you completely remove tax, people are not going to get revenue, so on and so forth. That's problematic. But no, just specify your position. Panel, we are not talking about like removing taxes at all. We're talking about reducing the taxes, and the amount of taxes that we're going to reduce is going to look like, let's say, 20% of the entire income, like income tax that they're going to actually pay. That's called specifying your position, basically being clear about what you're actually defending, and then moving on. Thirdly, you're supposed to structure or give the structure of your argument. The moment when I told you that you're supposed to say that, Pala, I'm going to give you 3 arguments from first speaker, and my second speaker is going to add on to the 4th argument. So you're supposed to say, and you can be having this particular structure if you want to, but people follow different structures. So there's nothing like a hard and fast rule. So you can say it like as a first speaker from proposition, you can say that, panel, this is how my speech will go. I'll first be talking about I'll first be telling you the definition to these terms, and then I'm going to tell you as to what the status quo actually looks like, and then I'm going to give you the 3 benefits of why we need to do what we're doing. So that's how the structure could look like, and then you can go ahead and like expand on the things that you have already told. Third is like present 2 to 3 argument. You can go ahead and say that these are the arguments. Now, I don't know how many of you all have debated earlier, but can you all, like, if you all know, just tell me what are the most important things. No, I'm just going to tell you what arguments actually have. So arguments have 3 things. First is claim or assertion, where you say that, where you make a claim. Let's say when you say that, like the education system in India is very bad. Let's say if you're saying that, and the claim that you're making is that, it's very expensive. Now, it's just a claim. You don't know why it is expensive. We don't know why you're saying what you're saying, even though it might be very like obvious in the face value. But that's just a claim. The second part of the argument is reasoning, where you say that the reason why education system in India is very very expensive is because of the lack of like good educational like institutions, or let's say the lack of like governmental institutions and so on and so forth. It could be that. and the third argument or the third part of the speech, and that's where the reasoning comes to why it is expansive in the first place. The third part of the argument is then example. Examples are basically when you say that, for example, even when you like go through the exam of like JEE, you still have to pay a lot of like amount of money, and that's really problematic. So that's something which you can say. But let's just move that. Okay, tell me, and I've told you three things. The things that are included in an argument. First is claim, second is reasoning, third is example. Tell me what amongst these things is the most important thing in an argument. Like you cannot miss it whatsoever. Just raise your hand, I'm going to tell you. Okay, what's your answer, Vidushi?
Reasons.
Okay. Other answers? Rhythm?
I did have the same answer because we're supposed to answer the why most of the time.
Correct. So it's extremely important that you give the answer to why. If you simply give claims and you say that, oh, I already told you, that's not going to help anything. So just have reasoning as to why, and that's extremely important. Even if you don't have examples, that's not like an issue. Cool. Going on with the do's, done. Now, why we shouldn't do what we shouldn't do. So first is you shouldn't give an unreasonable definition. For example, like giving as to like why a particular thing is geographically like situated in a particular place. When I talk to you about like, let's say if it is about like this house would reserve seats in a particular in like, okay, this house would reserve seats in parliament, and you're saying that, oh, it's only about like India and why it is problematic. No, you're not supposed to like just set it up in India. You're supposed to like generally debate it until unless the motion specifies this house would reserve seats in parliament in India, you can debate India. But if it's not about just India and the motion doesn't specify that, do not restrict the motion geographically to a particular place. What you can do in motions which doesn't specify, you can go ahead and like say that, oh, this debate probably happens in Western liberal democracies. That's also a very wide definition, and you're not restricting it to geographical nations. And the reason why you can do so, the one thing that I told you, and that's probably for the like the higher divisions. So for example, when you say that like we are restricting the debate, not restricting, but this debate happens in a Western liberal democracy. For example, it's about a feminist motion where you're talking about like, let's say, you're talking about abortion rights, let's say. This debate cannot happen in a conservative nation like Arab or anything of that sort, where it's impossible to enact such kind of like policies because it's just impractical. But you're supposed to like do that debate in a place where it's possible to do so, and therefore you can say that, oh, this debate happens in a Western liberal democracy. Cool. Now going to like, what you're not supposed to do. Now, let's say the debate is about like this house would ban shooting. Now, let's say what you're not supposed to do as a reasonable, like as an unreasonable definition is that you're saying, oh, shooting means taking pictures of these individuals. You're not supposed to do that. Shooting obviously means killing and using the guns. But yes, so just remember that don't give unreasonable definitions which does not make sense. Give definitions which are actually relevant. Now, setting illogical links, do not make illogical links which do not make any sense, which are not even relevant to the motion. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys have any question only to the first speaker of proposition, you can go ahead. No questions. Moving on to the next slide then. Proposition second speaker. I've already told you a lot of it. I think it's probably going to be repetitive, but I think just listen to it because it's probably going to help you when you're going to get the matchups. Cool. What the second speaker of proposition is supposed to do is identify the clashes. I think I've already told you what clashes look like. So the reason why clashes are important from the second speaker is that when I told you that you're supposed to extend and give more reasonings, I think it's beneficial when you compare the arguments and then give reasoning. For example, if like your proposition, the first speaker has talked to you about health, and then you're telling us to like why health is going to be better off, and giving more reasoning, I think it's always going to give you a better leeway when you're like comparing as to like not just like adding on to the reasoning, but also like comparing it to the opposition. You can be like, like I'm going to tell you that, look, health is going to be better off in our side of the house because the little particles of plastic that you ingest because of like these plastic containers or anything of that sort is problematic. And the comparative to opposition is that where opposition, you're literally doing that and nobody really calls you out for that, and therefore it's problematic, like extremely problematic in opposition, even harsher or something like that. So that's called like adding on to the material and then also clashing with that argument. The second thing is rebuttal. Obviously, you're supposed to rebuild the case. You're supposed to also rebut the opposition's claim, and it's called as leader of opposition. You're supposed to rebut the entire leader of opposition's claims. But also, like, rebuttal does not mean that you're supposed to rebut everything. Tell me if there are if there are 5 arguments presented by leader of opposition, are you going to rebut everything, or are you going to pick and choose what you want to rebut? Tell me that.
We
You'll
should
rebut what's
rebut
most
only
important.
the important points.
Okay, I heard one person, the other person.
We're
Okay, just like
supposed to rebut the important points.
yes, correct. So you're supposed to rebut the things which you think are very important for the debate. That doesn't mean that you're going to cherry pick things which you have the rebuttal to, and you're only going to rebut that. That doesn't mean that. What it means is that, let's say, if proposition or if opposition speaker spent too much time on a particular argument, understand if they're spending so much time on that argument, it's important. And therefore rebut that claim first and then take that down and then go ahead with the other claims. So firstly, rebut the most important parts. If you still have time left, then go to the less important arguments. Good. Then you have arguments. You're supposed to present arguments and then give at least one better extension from your first speaker. Also, you can go ahead and like clarify the definition challenge. The definition challenge is when opposition gives a counter definition, and then you can go ahead and say that, look, we did not mean what you're saying. We meant that, like, in income tax, we have identified this particular definition as what it is because of these reasonings, and therefore you can like respond to the counter definition that opposition gave. But what you're not supposed to do as second speaker is picking too many rebuttals. You have to prioritize arguments, and then also like new context. Don't like give new context as to like where the debate actually happens. The definition part, the defining part, the framing part, as to where the debate happens, what is the world looking like in the status quo. All of that has been done by the first speaker. That's done and dusted. Don't start it again, the second speaker at all. That's how it's going to look like. Cool. Moving on to the third speaker from proposition then. Third speaker from proposition does a couple of things. Firstly, summarize everything which has been presented by your team. As I said, like first, second, third argument, whatever the argument is. Then defend your team. Because you're the last person to speak from proposition, you're supposed to rebut everything that comes from the first 2 speakers of opposition. You can like tell why that does not matter. Argument why the principal argument is not something which has as much of value, and so on and so forth. Then go ahead and like prioritize issues that against basically like clashes. Identify like why your team's arguments are more important than the opposition's argument, and lastly conclude. So it's also supposed to give us like why you won the debate. So convince the judge as to why they should vote for you as opposed to the opposition. Now, you're not supposed to like give like new arguments or like anything which is new claim. For example, let's say if like you're only talking about all the speakers were like first 2 speakers were talking about health, environment, and then economy. You cannot come up with like the last argument which is about innovation in your speech. Judges are not going to give you credit for that. However, if it is a new example to the existing argument that has been given to your by your teammates, you can give new examples. You can give additional reasoning to what your first speaker and second speaker has given on the argument, but you cannot give new argument. So do not give new argument in the third speaker. It's going to be discredited by the judges. And it's probably going to harm your marks as well. So just don't do it. And it's also going to harm your team in general, because your job was to give rebuttals. Your job was to like prove to the judge as to why they won. Yes, Adya?
Is summarizing important than rebutting the arguments?
No, you're supposed to rebut the arguments first. The reason why is that, let's say, and that's also like a strategy. So if you think that your first and second speaker has rebutted enough to the opposition, then you don't need to like be scared, and you can spend equal time in rebutting and summarizing. But if you think that your first and second speaker has not done enough to rebut the arguments for opposition, then please prioritize rebutting. The second reason also is because you have heard DLO, which nobody in your team actually heard. So what if like DLO has really good points? Who will rebut that? And therefore, if you don't rebut that in the government whip, they're going to take away that clash, and therefore they're going to win the debate. So rebutting is important as third speaker from proposition.
Okay.
Cool. Are there any questions on proposition third speaker then? Going to take that as okay. Yes, Rhythm.
I'm sorry if I'm taking a bit of your time, but I just want to confirm that the first two speakers can introduce new arguments and build upon them. The second one can also build upon the first one, but the last speaker cannot introduce any new arguments. They just have to summarize and weigh the arguments out, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to the first speaker from opposition. It's exactly the same as what proposition first speaker says, but there are little differences. First difference is that you are supposed to identify or establish the major clash because you've heard the speaker. And if you think that your arguments are going to be similar in terms of the contestation, so if you think that proposition is also running health and you're also running health, then identify that as a clash and say that, look, we think that the debate is going to be won by the person who's going to prove to you as to like where health is better off, and therefore we from opposition are going to win this debate for sure. That can be a clash identification. But secondly, what you're supposed to do is give counter definition if you think that you don't agree to the definition by proposition. But counter definition does not work the way you think it does. You cannot just simply say that, oh, look, we don't agree to the proposition's definition and just move on. You cannot do that. You're supposed to do a couple of things if you're going to like challenge that definition. Firstly, give a justification as to why you think that definition given by proposition was not good enough, or like why it was so uncharitable. So when I said that, oh, if proposition is going to say that shooting means clicking pictures from camera, opposition you can say that like, look, proposition is like really uncharitable, and this debate cannot happen when it is about like clicking pictures from camera. It's just like so like unreasonable, and that's how you challenge the definition. So firstly, you give the justification, but secondly, what do you think is the definition actually? So you're supposed to say that, look, we think that the shooting basically means when we are killing individuals, or when we are killing animals by gun, for example, and all of that. So that's how shooting is actually look like, but that's how shooting looks like. But then, yeah, that's how you're supposed to go ahead and challenge the definition. First, tell why you're challenging, and then give a counter definition. That's how it's going to look like. Secondly, I think again, you're supposed to specify your position. So if proposition is going to say that, like, look, we're just like reducing and we're not removing. I think opposition can say that even if it talks about reducing, we think it's going to be so less that it's going to be like not going to give a lot of delta that can be your position. But also you're supposed to go ahead and give argumentation, present case line, similar things as first speaker from proposition. All of that is similar, presenting arguments, giving reasoning, examples, and all of that. So that's pretty much it. Counter definition, clash, and then arguments, and that's all what opposition first speaker is supposed to do. If you guys have any question, you can ask. And yes, you're supposed to rebut the first speaker from proposition. So because you've heard them, you can rebut them. So you can be like, this is how my speech is going to look like. I'm first going to be taking down the major claims from proposition and then going to build up on my case. But that doesn't mean that you're going to take half of your time in rebutting them and then not giving the positive material. Prioritize your positive material and then go on to rebuttal, or like fix the rebuttal time as like, let's say 1 minute, and then move on to your case. Cool. If you guys have any question to the first speaker of opposition, you can ask. No questions. Going on to the second speaker of opposition. Second speaker of opposition does exactly the same as what second speaker of proposition does. The only thing is that you get to choose, like you get to like reply to two speakers, that is PM and DPM, rebut to all the arguments. I think you have to prioritize DPM because I think most of the times it can be the case that your first speaker has already rebutted a lot of points from PM, so you can go ahead and like rebut the DPM first and then PM, or you can collectively like rebut them, and you can give more arguments if you want to, and that's pretty much it. Going on to the third speaker from opposition, third speaker from opposition, you can strictly not give a new argument. You can strictly not do anything which is new as an opposition whip. The reason why it's more stricter, and you're supposed to tell me the answer to that, why do you think it's like stricter for opposition whip than for government whip?
Because the opposition speaker, the last speaker should be able to counter all of the arguments given by the proposition.
Okay. Are there any other answers? Yes, Rhythm.
Since they don't, since the opposition, the last speaker is going last, the proposition won't have another chance to rebut against new arguments to build onto those, which is why they have to build onto the previous arguments and state why they are better than the propositions.
Yep, so both of you are correct. So you're supposed to summarize and then do the clashes, weigh in the arguments, rebut and all of that, but you're not supposed to give new arguments. It's very unfair for the proposition if you come up with a new argument and then they're like, oh, what should we do? We cannot respond to them. And therefore it's unfair. And therefore, like, even if you give a new argument, the judge is going to be discrediting that argument. So don't do that at all. If you guys have any questions, then ask. If not, we'll move to the next slide. Cool. How to approach a motion? So whenever you see the motion, I think most of you all have not received the motion because your matches are on 2nd of November. But whenever you see the motion, that's how the things you're supposed to understand. Understand that whenever you see a motion and whenever a motion has been made, there has been some thought given to that motion, which means that that motion has been made based on a problem that is existing. So when we say that this house would increase social security or social welfare measures for females, that means that there are some problems existing for females in society. So that is the problem statement. But how can we solve that problem? And I think it's not that, oh, only proposition is going to solve the problem. Opposition does not solve the problem at all. I think there are two ways. Firstly, I think the proposition of the motion itself is, let's say, this house would increase social welfare measures for females in places where gender discrimination is really high. I think proposition is going to come up, be like, look, we're going to like give social welfare measures because we're going to increase the amount of like education that females are going to get, which means it's going to increase the amount of like exposure that females actually have in society, stuff like that. So that doesn't mean that opposition is against females in totality. Opposition can come up with like two things. Firstly, why the solution from opposition, like proposition, is not relevant. The way how that works is basically, let's say, why you can go ahead and say that, oh, look, we understand that there's gender discrimination, but that doesn't mean that like giving social welfare measure is going to like reduce gender discrimination. The reason why it can lead to probably like counter discrimination, because when men in the society are going to see that, oh, females are getting like preferential treatment, they're going to be very like sad about it, and therefore it's going to like react against them and stuff like that. So they're not like against females per se, but they're going to say that, look, this solution that proposition is giving is probably nonsense. But secondly, they can also come up with different solution. They can give, we think that proposition's model is not relevant to the motion and it's a problem solution mismatch, but we are going to give you another like solution to that problem. So that could look like, we think that what we have to do is increase awareness programs for females, and therefore when we go to the rural areas and we tell that, look, females and males are equal, and the reasons why, I think it's probably going to like open the minds of individuals rather than just like going ahead and giving social welfare measures in the first place. So I think that's how it's going to look like. So it can be like you giving counter solutions and then tell why your solution is better. So you're given a motion, identify the problem, come up with solutions, why your solution is better, and like why there can be like other solutions from opposition. But proposition is essentially supposed to like stick to the solution that is being given. A lot of times the solution is already being given to opposition as well in the motion. For example, this house believes that renewable sources of energy should be prioritized over nuclear power plants. That means that wind energy and like water energy and all, like I think solar energy and hydroelectricity and everything should be prioritized over nuclear power plant. Tell me, what is the burden of proposition in this debate and what is the burden of opposition in this debate? Just raise your hand. The motion again, I'm going to repeat. We would be prioritizing the natural renewable sources as opposed to nuclear power plant, which means that we would be like prioritizing wind energy, hydroelectricity, and everything over nuclear power plant. Tell me what is the burden of proposition and what is the burden of opposition here. I didn't know responses at all. Okay, I'm going to tell you by myself. So I think proposition is going to tell that like why wind energy, solar energy, and all of that is better than nuclear energy. But that doesn't mean that opposition can come up with like an entirely different like alternative and say that, look, we think that conservative sources of energy is fine. No, if the motion has defined a counter model already, which is nuclear energy, opposition is supposed to defend nuclear energy only. So that's a solution to a problem that could be like environmental harms and stuff like that. So yep, so you're supposed to identify possible stakeholders and so possible stakeholders could, again, I think I've told you, but yes, I'm going to give you an example of a motion, and then you're supposed to tell me what could be the possible stakeholders. And you're not supposed to be with me, because if you don't understand this, I don't know how you're going to be like arguing. But yes, so this house opposes slum tourism. Can anyone tell me what slum tourism is? Okay, Vidushi.
Something that is fake.
Something that is
Fake.
fake.
I think it's people going just to slum and yeah, to take pictures and all.
Uh-huh. Rhythm.
I think it's just the procedure or process of promoting tourism in slums, like inviting tourists and making it sort of like a tourist attraction or site.
Yes, but you know, like the interpretation to that is basically that when you attract them to the slums, you're not enhancing the positions of slum, which means that they're still going to look very poor, and that's called slum tourism, which means that people essentially coming, let's say people from United Kingdom coming to India just to visit Dharavi, because they want to like evaluate poverty, they want to see how miserable positions are with people and stuff like that. That's called as slum tourism. This is the motion, this are the poses, slum tourism. Before we move into a practice debate, I want you all to go ahead and tell me what could be the relevant stakeholders in this debate. And I want one by one as to what could be the stakeholder. And that's just going to make me understand that you've understood what stakeholders are. If you guys know what could be the stakeholders, and I'm going to explain what stakeholders are. Stakeholders are the people, individuals, concepts, which are going to be impacted by the motion.
Well, for the proposition,
No,
you'd
it can
have
be like you can just give me anything. Like generally, what could be the
people who are living in the slums itself,
correct? Next,
the tourists who
okay, yes,
who actually visit these places.
go ahead as well. Vidushi,
The tourists and the people living in the slums.
okay. Any other answers? I think Rhythm.
I believe the residents that are generally around the slums, they may not be living in the slums or poor, but the residents near the slum areas.
Okay. I think Manasvi.
I think the tourist agency, which like like invest in the foreign tourists, actually they would be impacted, because if they are showing a very bad side of country, so obviously the government will force them to like try to avoid these, so obviously they'll have a burden to abolish or even stop these slum tourism.
Correct.
Can the stakeholders be non-sentient beings?
Yes, it can be.
All right.
So it can be anything. So it can be economy as well. Economy because probably it can benefit the economy because people are coming in. Essentially, it's going to be like giving some amount of
It's an industry, obviously. So
yes. So you can also be like, oh, the stakeholders are the shopkeepers, the small shopkeepers in the slums who are going to be benefited because when tourists are going to come in, they're going to probably buy some few stuffs and oh, I'm giving you the arguments, you're supposed to debate on this. Cool. Yes, so that's how stakeholders actually work. Manasvi and Siddharth, if you guys have extra stakeholders, you can go ahead.
I think this activity might increase tourism, maybe in a country or in a particular city, which might have the government take actions. So maybe the government as well.
Correct. Yes. So it can be the tourism as a stakeholder, and government and development as a stakeholder as well. Correct. Cool. Now I want three volunteers who want to speak for the motion and three volunteers who want to speak against the motion in the chat. So just like write your name and then your position which you want to speak for. It's going to be first come, first serve. And that's going to help you. So it's not going to be a full-fledged speech where you're supposed to speak for 6 minutes or 4 minutes. It's just going to be you giving one argument and that's all. And I can help you as to like why your argument or like why your like speaker position is fine enough and what you can do in order to improve that. We have one chat which says proposition 1 Vidushi Lavanya. Yes. Anybody else? Anybody else who wants to oppose? Go ahead, don't be shy. I think you all will do pretty well. We did this activity with like kids from 4 to 6 people and they were like pretty amazing. So you all are okay. Siddharth and Reet are going to be up. So opposition 1 is going to be Reet. Opposition 2 is going to be Siddharth. I hope that's okay with you. Proposition 2, is there going to be anyone else?
Just a second. I want to ask a question.
Go ahead.
Can you just once define or summarize what is slum tourism?
Yes. So slum tourism is when the people from outside come to a particular place to only visit slums. Let's say increasing the idea that, people from outside or tourists in general just want to like visit slums. They want to see the poverty. They want to see the miserable situations that people are in, stuff like that. So you're coming to India not to see Taj Mahal. You're not coming to see, let's say, Mumbai, but you're supposed to come, like you're coming to India just to see the Dharavi part of like the Maharashtra. So that's called slum tourism.
I wanna be in like a proposition because my personal opinion is that slum we should not visit it because it gives us bad opinion about the country. Like there is
Correct.
like a lot of slum here.
Now, don't give arguments right now. I'm going to give you the chance to speak in your speech. You can give all of those arguments later. Yes, so Vidushi is going to be first speaker, and then Anshua is going to be second speaker from proposition. We have only 2 speakers from proposition. Can anyone else also like volunteer for proposition? But by the time I'm also going to see who is going to go position. It's Reet first up, and then Siddharth, and then I think Kainath. Oops, we have a lot of people for opposition. And then Rhythm and Adya. I think Rhythm and Adya, you'll have to like shift to opposition, like proposition if you don't mind. So either one of you who is okay with like shifting to opposition. Rhythm, Adya. Okay, Adya says, yeah.
Yeah, I can try for the.
Cool. So Rhythm, your job in this debate is going to be telling us who is winning the debate, okay?
Oh, hell yes.
Cool. So yeah, so we're gonna start the debate, and it should be very short because it's gonna take a lot of time. I think all of you just want to eat your dinner. So yes, we're gonna start with Vidushi. Whenever you're ready, you can present your argument.
All right.
And I would love if you can keep your cameras on so that it's interactive, but yeah. Yes, love that, Adya. Reet, Anshuman, very good, guys. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing so that I can see you all better. Cool.
Can you once clarify who all are from government and who all are from opposition?
I'll just like write that in the chat box, okay?
Um,
Are you going to like identify your opponents and then like go
Yeah.
over them? Oh my God.
So probably my first argument would be that slum tourism is making the better tourist attractions of the place look slightly lower compared to the standards of them. Because yeah.
Okay.
Opposition is supposed to support the slum tourism, or the government is supposed to do that?
Nobody's supposed to. Okay, so proposition is supposed to oppose slum tourism, and opposition is supposed to support the slum tourism. It's all actually opposite. Reed says that they cannot go with it, but like, is there anyone who can like fill in for Reed? I know Rhythm wanted to like debate, but then they're already like judging now. I don't know if you want to switch to debating now.
I'm happy.
Okay. Okay, others, Shivarth, Ananya Kulkarni, what's up with you guys? Seems like it. Okay, let's just move to Siddharth then.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I think we should promote slum tourism, because when more people visit these not so prosperous neighborhoods, slum tours, they can showcase how energetic a casual Indian slum could be, or how cultural it could be. People can explore different cultures, and maybe even these people who live in the slums, they can learn something from the people who are visiting, learn about their cultures, and etc. That's all.
Cool. Moving on to the second speaker from Proposition. Anshuman, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Now, I wanted to say that slum tourism is like when we go to a slum just for tourism, the first thing that comes to our mind is, dude, this country is so poor. Even if we are so rich, we are the fifth economy, and we are decreasing our tourism. Why? Because of these slums. And what I think that we should not do slum tourism, because it forms a bad opinion about a country, whether it's true or not true. And about helping slum by slum tourism, government is already helping them. And if I send a picture to social media, how many of them are going to actually help? About 1%, and that government are actually doing double of it. They are giving them houses. Why? If the slum tourism is the best tourism, why are we removing slums like that? Why are we giving houses? We should not do like when I came to India for the first time. Then I saw slums. Like I was thinking that why I just came to this country, I don't know, and it was a bad opinion for me. But now when I got to know that this is because of overpopulation, and most of the tourists won't understand it. Thank you. That's all.
All right. Can we move to the next speaker, who is it? I think it's Siddharth.
Ma'am, I just spoke. I think it's Kaina.
Yeah, it's just because you already spoke. Second speaker went first. Yes. Adya. No, it's not Adya as well. It's Kainat. Kainat, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. So I think slum tourism should be promoted as it generates economy and it generates economy for tourist companies. And as my colleague had said before, that tourists get attracted by the cultural life in slums and get introduced to new traditions. So small business owners in slums who sell small souvenirs would also generate a lot of money through tourists who are attracted by their culture. Yes, that's my argument.
Cool. Thank you so much for that. Adya, your turn.
Yes. Before I begin, I would like to define slum tourism. A tourism which is supposed a tourist who is supposed to go to a place that is poor and is not really developed. Slum tourism can be harmful in many ways. In India, we have been, in the name of slum tourism, we have been robbed several times by Mughals, by Britishers, and whom not. India is the biggest place for some slum tourism. Our culture, if the tourists can also harm our culture in a really bad way. They just don't help us. And about economy has different aspects of that. The companies which provide tourism can also can increase their uh, their salaries or their economy by promoting different types of activities, not just promoting slum tourism. And about economy, not even a single person, no, in around in 100 people, only 10 people would forward to come forward to help the poor place, and the rest of the 90% people just see the place and think of their place as a poor place. But even though, I'll take an example of India is also India is told as the poor country. It's referred to as the poor country, but then India also has the richest culture. This culture can be harmed by these slum tourists. Thank you.
All right. I think Reet is back. Reet, you can continue with the third speech.
And I see, Adya, but if run well, slum tourism can bring economic benefits and social mobility to people living in under-resourced areas. The tours themselves may be run by local people, and visitors often buy locally produced goods, including food and souvenirs. Slum tourism involves tourism to improvise areas, particular, particularly to India, Brazil, Kenya, and Indonesia. The purpose of slum tourism is to provide tourists the opportunities to see non-tourist, non-unseen areas of a country or a city.
All right. Yes, that's amazing. So I just want to make few comments of how the debate actually went, and then we'll move to the judge rhythm to tell us who they think won the debate. But yes, so I think that one thing that I really liked is that I think somebody like tried to define what slum tourism actually is. That's pretty late. That's third speech. So yeah, that's really appreciated. Do that. But that's also to remind you that like speakers should not do that. Secondly, you're not supposed to like use colleagues and all that for your like teammates and all. Just like use you can use their names, or you can say that my first speaker or my second speaker went and said that. Colleagues is fine, but like debate is like for cool people. So I'm just kidding. So yeah, that's how you can go ahead and do so. But then thirdly, I think I also liked how you all like also referred to your opponents. You said that, oh, and you also clashed to a couple of things like economy. You also gave like counter solutions, which I really loved. I also liked how you engaged. So pretty good stuff. And I also like how you didn't give a particular claim, but also gave like responses and like reasonings to that. And Adya, I can see your question, and it's a really beautiful like claim. I think you can use it in in parliamentary debates, we don't have any restrictions with the kind of terms that you use. And I think like when it comes to slum tourism, and it's something specific to, I think, the senior divisions, I think we can also talk about like poverty porn and stuff like that. So yes, that does happen, and you don't have any restrictions to whether you think that you're like, I think you're like mature enough to use those like things as well. But I think if you know about it, that means that you are mature enough. And yes, so yes, you can use all of these things. Going ahead with the who do you guys think won the debate rhythm? Tell us your judgment.
Can I give my views before? I don't even know if I'm qualified to do this, but can I give my views beforehand?
Yeah.
Okay. So okay, I'll just announce the result first. I think I was more persuaded by the opposition speech, because I feel like, I'm not being biased, but I feel like the arguments that they made were more, first of all, in quantity as well, and they definitely emphasized on those better. But I would definitely have liked if they rebutted more, because especially being in the opposition, you do have that advantage of rebuttal, and the structure could also have been better. In the proposition, they defined what slum tourism is really well, which ma'am obviously mentioned before, which was great. And it really sets an idea of what you're talking about. And they definitely had great arguments as well. Theirs was structured, and the style, I feel, was much more improved.
So that is like the happiest. He can probably give you a treat today. Just like text him later. One sweetie for sure. Okay, yes, but I think that's the entire point. But I wanted to also let you know that if you think at any point of time you're not winning the debate, and that's the case, I think the judges can have a completely different opinion. So for example, I probably think that proposition one, it can be anything. So don't get like sad over a particular thing. Just like, it's just chill, okay? Moving on to the like few other things which are also important. I know it's like getting very hectic, but if you guys have any like doubts later also, you can ask me. Okay.
And
Okay,
now
yes.
they're actually asking for a treat.
Oh my God.
We've been asking since this morning.
You all actually met each other, no, in person? That's really
We're friends. I was not biased. Again, I gave reasons. We are friends, but according to my reasons.
biased. Now I'm just like disqualifying you for being the judge.
Uh-oh.
Oh my God, no, I'm just kidding. So yeah, I think that's really like the reasoning was nice. I think you just at least like you were just not saying that, you know, you won, like somebody won. You also gave reasoning, which is amazing. Cool. Now going on to the what can be the motions and what you can expect. It can be twofold. It's conflict resolution and problem solving. It can be water dispute, border conflicts, pollution, overpopulation. It can be anything. So how can you solve overpopulation? And then you can have different like solutions given to you, and then you can defend one of them. I'm not going into what could be the motion, but these can be the motion. And more on that, I think I think most of you are from like Gujarat, MP, and Chhattisgarh. So expect motions which are the quote unquote relevant issues for that state. Cool. Going on to the ground rules for the, yes, Adya.
Will we be given the topic on spot?
No. You'll be getting it tomorrow. For 4th to 6th grade, yes. If your debate is on 2nd, you'll get it tomorrow.
It's a relief to
You got
know that
No, but then the 10th and 12th grade are going to get it on the spot. No, not on the spot, but on the same day, three hours before, I guess. So,
Our information is also gonna be checked, or it will be like that?
yeah, information. Good question. So, in case of what information are you talking about?
What, ma'am?
What information are you talking about?
Ma'am, like if we say some information about to win the debate, but it's wrong, so will it be checked that the information is wrong, or it will be like that?
If it is statistic, and if it is about quantity, let's say you're saying that 35% of people in Punjab are dying, I think no, it's not going to be credited, because like in parliamentary debates, statistics matter less, reasonings matter more.
Okay, I got this question because like Adya said that India is a poor country, but actually it's the fifth largest economy in
It
the
is
world.
referred to as the poor country. I didn't say that it is the poor country.
Yeah. I think India is not poor. India is a developing nation and it's been developing for a really long time. We are not developed yet. And that's sad. So you can use that as the leeway. But like, yeah, so that's also a good point, Anshuman. You can always like counter them by saying that, oh, our opponent said that India is a poor country. But I would like to mention that India is not a poor country. So yeah, you can do that.
Ma'am, he's from my team itself.
Oops. Very bad, Anshuman.
What now?
You're not supposed to like counter your own teammates though. Like, don't go if Adya is first speaker. You can't like go ahead and knife your own speaker. You like Adya said this, but I disagree. You cannot do that. Okay.
I know that, ma'am. That's why when the debate ended and the results came, then I said this.
Oh, okay. Yes. The second thing is, okay, so what you're supposed to do is that speakers can run arguments on their states, but references to the other states can be made, like you can compare with other states. So for example, if the debate is about, about tourism, let's say if the debate is about tourism in Maharashtra, you can say, you can talk about tourism in Maharashtra particularly and what are the problems related to that. And then opponents can also like talk about their like respective states. But that doesn't mean that you cannot refer to other states like UP, or you cannot talk about like, what are the other states? There are many states in India. So just like you can give references, that's not a problem. Second is that please define the unique situation of your state. The reason why there are different like motions for each like team, as in like whoever you're going against, the motions are different. So the math, if you're in a particular match, the motion is going to be different. The reason is that we have made motions based on considering the two states which you're coming from, and therefore it's relevant to your state first and then to the other. So contextualize your motion based on that. Remember when I told you that you cannot like set up context to the motion in terms of a geographical area? Here you can, because it is based on that. Okay, so you can do that. So yes, these are the ground rules for round one, what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do. Debate respectfully, and these are like general things. I mean, I understand that a lot of you are like very passionate debaters, but that doesn't mean that you're going to say that, like whatever XYZ person said, they don't know anything about debating. They said some random, I don't want to cuss, but yeah. So yes, they just like said something which was not even relevant to the motion and stuff like that. You're not supposed to do that. The only thing that you're supposed to respond to in a motion or in a debate is the arguments and not your opponents. Arguments of the opponents, but not opponents themselves. So you're not supposed to say that my opponents did not make any sense, but you're supposed to say that their arguments did not make sense and why that is the case. So just be very polite. I think there are always ways to respond and rebut and be polite still, and be passionate about it again. Second is ask relevant POIs, and if they are not accepting your POIs, you cannot force them to accept. So you cannot also heckle them. Do you understand what heckling is? Heckling is like, let's say
harassing someone.
What?
Harassing someone verbally.
Yeah. So let's say if Adya is like speaking and I'm like, can I ask POI? And then she rejects. I'm like, POI, she rejects again. I'm saying POI. So I'm just like continuously repetitively saying POI, POI, POI. It's heckling. Just don't do that, because it's going to like irritate the speaker to the core, and it's also like very distracting for the speaker to like go ahead and speak. It's also going to be very taken very seriously if you're going to heckle. So if you have asked POI and the speaker has rejected the POI, you can only ask another POI after 30 seconds or 45 seconds, okay? Do not go ahead and like ask another POI just like after they have said no. Do not make random guesses in the debate. So if you think that, and this is particular to this debate, okay? So let's say you're in the middle of second speech and you think that, oh, I'm probably not going to win the debate because our opponents are so amazing. Don't do that. I think probably you think their opponents are amazing, or probably you have less confidence, but always have that confidence until unless the judge announces the verdict. So don't be like in self-doubt in middle, because it's probably going to harm your performance in the debate. Next is some things you need to know about any motion. There are different types of motions, and I think like in terms of like how you're supposed to approach them and what this house is. I think nobody asked me what is this house actually like, because I kept saying this house would, this house would ban and all that. Nobody asked me what this house is. Like, did you all already know what this house is? What is this house?
And this house is the team or the person who supports the argument which is given.
You can take it that way, but this house can be different things in different times. So for example, in actor motion specifically, when it is this house as the government or this house as India, for example, then this house becomes India or government as mentioned in the motion. But otherwise, it's just the team or the house who's the actor who does something. A lot of times, this house would not be mentioned as to who we are talking about. For example, if it is this house would ban cigarettes, who do you think this house can be?
The government.
Government.
Proposition.
Correct. So it's going to be government, because the only people who have the ability to ban cigarette is government, because they can make policies, they can implement laws, so on and so forth. Yes. So in policy motion, it's always government, that is this house will or this house would motion. Then there's this house believes that motion and this house supports motion. Then you can take it as individually as like your team, why you support, why you oppose. So I think most of the motions that we have made is based on this house believes that motion. This house believes that is basically value judgment motions, which means that you as a neutral perspective, you're supposed to evaluate the benefits as opposed to the harms of a particular thing. For example, this house believes that Christmas is better than Diwali. And then you're supposed to say why. And then you're supposed to evaluate the merits of Diwali as opposed to Christmas. It's a very bad example, but just like this house believes that, why you believe a particular thing or why that is the case. So that's how you're supposed to like evaluate it. And that's how the wordings of the motion could look like. When it comes to this house regrets and this house opposes, it's actually opposite. I think it's like it's just like taken as, you know, whenever it is proposition is going to say proposition is going to support the motion. But when it comes to this house opposes motion, I think we already did one. This house opposes slum tourism, which means that proposition is going to go against slum tourism and opposition is going to support slum tourism. Similar is with this house regrets. So it can be this house regrets cartoons. So you're supposed to be against cartoons in general from proposition, and then opposition is going to support cartoons. Then questions to ask yourself before you're making any argument. Firstly, you have to understand why this debate has been like set up, like what is the motion, what is the purpose of the motion, and then go ahead and go like tell what is the legitimacy of your proposition, what's the legitimacy of your argument, and then say that how can you actually substantiate the argument as to like is it just a claim or can I give reasonings to that? Can I give like substantiation to that argument or not? And then why are you proposing a particular thing? Is there any end goal that you're proposing that particular thing? Or it's just like nowhere. So if it is nowhere, it's probably like running around in air that is not going to have a lot of impact. But if it has an end goal, it's probably going to have more impact. Then you have proposition exclusively better than these sides' arguments. So like why you think your arguments are better, what is the merit of your arguments? Again, what are the rebuttals? I think it is basically rebuttals are based. Rebuttals are basically Reed, can you mute yourself? Okay, yes. So rebuttals are concessions and mitigations. A lot of times, you know, you don't have to always respond. You can just say that, sure, proposition proved to you that health is better, but we're going to prove to you why environment is going to be better off in our side of the house. That is called as concession or mitigation. So you're saying that, okay, or it's probably a trade-off. So you say that, look, you have that better, but we have this better. And why you can trade this with that. So why health can be traded with environment, or why environment can be traded with health, stuff like that. Second is flipping the argument. Flipping happens when you flip the reasoning of the argument. So for example, when you say that, when proposition says that, look, health is going to be better off in my side of the house, opposition can say that, look, I think in their side of the house itself, health is going to be worse off. That's when you flip the argument on themselves and you flip the benefit that they proposed in their side of the house as a harm on their side. Third is disprove. When you say that, look, proposition is saying that health is going to be better off in their side of the house, we are going to say that health cannot be better off in their side of the house. So that all of their reasoning falls apart. And that's pretty much it, how you respond. Criteria of evaluation is not that important for you, but in case if you want to enhance your speaker scores, you're supposed to like focus on three things. Firstly, matter, secondly, manner, and thirdly, method. Matter is the kind of argument that you run, the examples that you give, the kind of like reasoning that you give and stuff like that. And then secondly, manner, the way how you present yourself, the way you speak, your body language, your structure, your eye contact, everything. But also if you have voice modulation or not, everything is going to be seen. That also means that you're supposed to keep your cameras on. You do not keep your cameras on. This session, it's not that it's not going to impact anything, but then please switch on your camera during the debate. Thirdly is method. Method basically means that the way how you're structuring your argument, whether the first part of your argument makes sense with the second part of the argument, whether you prioritize or spoke the argument first, which was actually making more sense, or whether you just wasted your time, whether you took POI or not, all of it is going to be seen as method. And that's pretty much it. If you guys have any general questions, you can ask. But yeah, that is the training session.
Okay. Could you just give us like an overall of how the state debate's gonna go, like the structure, the format? I mean, not the format, but how it's going to work online.
As in like how the structure, as in like PM DPM wala structure, or like
No. Just how it's gonna go
the debates.
online. There's no way I know how to structure this sentence, but so the motion will be for our grades 10th to 12th. It'll be revealed 3 hours before the actual debate, right?
Correct. Yes.
That's November 2.
Yes.
Okay, and that it'll be over Zoom. I have no
Yeah, it is going to be over Zoom. Yes, correct.
structure like that.
Yes. Okay, cool. So you will get your I think, did you all have oh my god, I'm getting English. You all have your, I'm gonna stop recording first and then